Hi everybody, Rod Mom here. Welcome back to the garden. Tonight we have with us someone new, someone who's never appeared on the channel before, someone who may be a familiar face to many of you because this person has been heavily involved in trans rights politics for some time. We're going to be dissecting some misinformation from Jammie Dodger tonight, so stick around for that. First, real quick, like the video if you enjoy my content. Subscribe to the channel for more of it, and stick around because we're going to be doing some feminism from a materialist perspective. Let's go see what we got.
Recently, the founder and director of an organisation called Transgender Trend appeared on Sky News. This was once again an example of trans people being spoken about and being spoken over by those spreading transphobic rhetoric and misinformation.
Yeah, gee. It must be so hard being talked over and misrepresented while they take your rights away. Yeah, gee, gosh, I wouldn't know what that's like at all. Especially in the United States, American women. We don't know what that's like at all.
Trans people are barely invited onto these public spaces to debate our rights and existence, let alone given the individual platforms that transphobes are so often given.
Oh, please. Trans people are given many platforms. There's both fictional, non-fictional reality shows. What the fuck are you talking about? There wasn't a trans person there to talk over this woman. Yeah, boo fucking who.
Trans people, trans people's lives, and trans rights are not something that should be up for debate. Trans people exist, and trans people deserve to live our lives as ourselves and access the appropriate healthcare, including in childhood.
Ooh, endorsement of childhood transition. Those are heavy words there, Jammie. Yeah, trans people do not exist. No. No one is born in the wrong body. It's not a thing. And the evidence actually bears that out. Yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
Transgender Trend, who are we? We are an organisation of parents, professionals and academics based in the UK who are concerned about the current trend to diagnose children as transgender, including the unprecedented number of teenage girls suddenly self-identifying as trans. They're referencing rapid onset gender dysphoria there, which is something that is unfounded and not supported by any trans-inclusive medical board. And the W Path has actively denounced ROGD as a thing and a term to be used. ROGD is not evidence-based, it's not scientific.
Rapid onset gender dysphoria is not scientific. The term literally comes from a scientific paper. Yeah, that was published by a lady who had to pretty much immediately retract said paper because it was so incendiary. But they couldn't disprove any of her findings. And actually, we see proof of this, and it's demonstrated over and over and over again on the internet and in real life every day.
We're also concerned about legislation which places transgender rights above the right to safety for girls and young women in public toilets and changing rooms, along with fairness for girls in sport. Typical transphobia about trans rights hinder women's rights. They don't. You are pitting trans rights and women's rights against each other, when actually, if you just looked at the facts, they do not impede on each other, and trans women need women's rights. And trans people are the last people who want to take rights away from anybody.
Trans rights and women's rights don't contradict one another? Okay. Then why here in the United States do we not have protection based on sex anymore? You just have nothing based on the fact that you're a woman. Nothing. Because it's been reinterpreted to include gender identity, which overrides physical sex, doesn't it, Jammie? As far as trans women need women's rights, no they don't. No they don't. They need human rights because they're human, like everyone. They're men, though. And thusly not in need of anything approaching women's rights, which have to do with our physical, material needs that are different from men's. And the last people to want to take anyone's rights away? Oh please, wow, I guess, you might have a leg to stand on for that one if it hadn't already fucking happened.
We believe that children with gender dysphoria deserve evidence-based treatment and have a right to the same duty of care as any other child. Okay, before we watch a little clip of the interview, we can have a very small chat about the evidence-based healthcare available for trans children and the science that backs it up. It's been found that early social transition for trans youth leads to positive mental health outcomes.
Those positive mental health outcomes you keep referring to is self-reported. You don't actually follow these people around to, like, see if they're happy. No. No. They have you come in for a checkup and fill out a questionnaire. And no amount of self-reported happiness is going to turn you into a real boy, hun.
A study into over 300 transgender youth with a mean age of 8 years old found that after 5 years, 97.5% were still identifying as either binary transgender or non-binary.
Wow, that was a lot of nothing, because persistence in a supportive environment does not prove anything. Other than a kid will do what they're encouraged to do. Duh.
It has also been stated that transphobes ignore decades of research that support the access to healthcare of both transgender adults and children.
And it has also been said, by me in my last video, that trans rights activists ignore the overwhelming rate of eventual desistance in non-medicalized youth. 80 to 90% of them will eventually just grow up to be reasonably normal human beings who understand that they were not born in the wrong body, because that's not a fucking thing.
Medical associations support the treatment of transgender people, both social and medical. In trans youth aged 13 to 20 years old, access to gender-affirming healthcare led to a 60% drop in the chances of severe to moderate depression.
Wow! More attention makes mentally ill people less depressed. Genius!
And when I tell you that was me just going over a fraction of the actual evidence-based healthcare and science around trans people and trans children having access to the appropriate healthcare, I mean it, that was a fraction. If they're talking about wanting evidence-based healthcare, there it is, but your transphobia is stopping you from seeing it.
No, your denial is making you insist upon all of this ad nauseum, over and over again. I think you repeat yourself 3 or 4 times just in this 10-minute video about these things that you need so badly to be true because you've staked your entire existence on it.
Anyway, now that we've cleared that up a little bit, it's time to go through the actual video clip of what this person said.
It challenges the idea that children are being medically transitioned.
I'm going to stop it already because children being medically transitioned is such a thrown about phrase. When this kind of phrase is said, the automatic assumption from people hearing that who do not know anything beyond what they've just been told will assume that children are being given hormones and having surgery in relation to being trans. If people are actually aware of the terrible state that trans healthcare is in the UK at the moment...
Okay, yes. The big gender clinic has been broken up. But, what I read was that they're going to set up smaller local clinics to send these kids to, which are, supposed to be more holistic. Which sounds good to yours truly. But that's not exactly a terrible state of healthcare. More local and holistic. These are all good things for positive outcomes, just not necessarily for the outcome that you want, right?
Trans kids are actually very unlikely to have an appointment anytime soon anyway, let alone receive any kind of gender-affirming care, which, by the way, would be reversible puberty blockers.
Okay, so those reversible puberty blockers are hormone blockers. Yeah, they're not reversible. You don't get that time back. They start giving them to you when you're 8, or Tanner stage 2 is 9 to 11. So 9, 10, 11 years old. They start giving them to you at 9. And then, you don't get hormones until you're 16? That's 7 years. What's the difference between a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old? And what? They're just going to change their minds at that point? When they've lost something. Yes, they have. That they can't ever get back. And you want to gloss over that so desperately because this narrative is obviously terribly important to you.
That would be very stringently monitored, with 16 then being the minimum age for hormones, and it being very rare for people to actually get hormones at 16, and parental consent needing to be required. Children with accepting parents and families and guardians are able to make social transitioning steps to live in a way that makes them feel more comfortable and get on the waitlist to speak to a gender specialist. Then, after years of being on this waitlist and multiple appointments and assessments later, then maybe they might access puberty blockers. Just gonna throw it in there again that early social transition has been shown to lead to improved mental health.
Wow, that was some gish gallop, right? Okay, so you say that childhood transition does not exist, and then you describe how it happens and insist to us that it is a good thing. Because again, these self-reported measures of happiness. Yeah, I mean, do we want to talk about all the kids that end up dropping out of these studies and how they didn't end up being around to report on how unhappy they almost certainly were?
And in fact, I don't challenge the idea of transgender people. What I do challenge is the ideology behind it. It's
So she doesn't dispute that trans people exist, but she's challenging the ideology behind the existence of trans people? Huh? What does that even mean? Some people are trans. The ideology behind that is that trans people exist, deserve equal rights, and deserve access to appropriate gender-affirming healthcare.
Oh, my God, lady. Come on. You were so close. She doesn't deny trans people. Well, I do. But JD is confused here, and you can't blame her. I mean, the lady basically contradicted herself. Refers generally to some vague ideology and doesn't specify what the fuck that is at all. So, yeah, I think the lady is confused. You know, good on her for, you know, wanting to speak up for us. But you gotta think these things through, honey.
that children are being taught that they're a boy or a girl based on really regressive stereotypes rather than their biological sex. I think it's doing the theory of gender identity is doing great harm to children.
Please tell me where this is happening.
Everywhere! That's the criteria that they use. How in the fuck else do you know that a little kid who can't talk is trans? Other than observing their behavior and how it doesn't conform to your expectations. How in the fuck else would you possibly know that a 2-year-old? Yeah, no.
And it leads, once a child identifies themselves as transgender, then the medical pathway is experimental. It's essentially chemical castration of children.
Oh, you can't just go on national television. Trans healthcare has existed for decades.
Objection. Appeal to authority.
The use of hormone blockers has existed for decades.
Existed for decades, huh? Well, there's another appeal to authority. Lots of things have existed for decades. I mean, hell, your monarchy has existed for decades. Are you going to go ask the queen about your gender identity? I think not. That doesn't prove anything.
Trans people, adults and children alike, deserve access to healthcare.
Blocking puberty is chemical castration. It is. Because no sexual development equates to no sexual function. You can't use what you don't have. And if you cut them off in the process of developing that, what they're saying now is that in the case of trans males, anyway, it leads to anorgasmia almost 100% of the time. You know, so they can be the sexiest fucking woman alive, and they'll live up to that stereotype, I guess, because they'll never orgasm in their lives either. That's fucking terrible. And this is the kind of stuff that you are speaking for, okay? Because you've done a lot of similar things to yourself, and you need to believe that you did the right thing, which is understandable, don't we all? But this video is so packed full of lies. I had to address it. It's just so dense and juicy.
Besides, puberty blockers have been shown to reduce gender dysphoria. There's strict criteria to be able to access these blockers, and kids are monitored closely to check for any potential side effects from taking puberty blockers, and treatment is stopped or altered if these occur. And transphobes really do just conveniently ignore the decades of research that support the access to healthcare for trans kids and trans adults, with medical associations supporting the treatment of trans people both in adulthood and childhood, both socially and medically.
Blah, blah, blah. Puberty blockers good. Blah, blah. Appeal to authority. Again. Repetitive much. Repetitive much? I mean, you've already made these points. Saying it over and over again doesn't make it true.
Or, you know, teenage girls are being encouraged to have their breasts cut off if they identify as transgender or non-binary.
Wonderful bit of misgendering there, absolutely lovely. Just calling trans boys girls.
Misgendering. Who is being misgendered here? Who is going out of their way to curate some narrative here? I can see why this would upset you. It's pretty obvious why that would upset you, because maybe there's a part of you that relates to it a little too much.
The language is so grossly insidious. Teenage girls? Wrong.
Language is insidious. Well, you would know.
As far as encouragement is concerned, please go and do some reading about how difficult and long it takes to actually access healthcare as a trans person. From the 5-year wait lists to even see somebody for an appointment, to the multiple hoops you have to jump through, multiple appointments, multiple assessments, there is no encouragement.
Wow, being trans is hard. Oh. Well, you brought it on yourself in a lot of ways there, hun. What do you mean they're not being encouraged? Yes, you know that giant gender clinic that they got shut down here recently? That was why they got in trouble, was because they were pushing kids down this path, and it's been shown in court that was going on. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
So this idea that your body has to match your personality based on these really regressive stereotypes which we should have left well behind.
And that's it. Your gender is not your personality.
No, but your gender seems to have consumed your personality. Please, we've got to figure out a way to help some of these people. Because as scary as it is, it's also very, very sad.
But seriously, this is just an example of somebody who does not know what they are talking about, and then for some reason has been given credibility and a platform to spread this misinformation on.
Doesn't know what they're talking about. And you're delusional. But we should listen to you?
Trans people deserve better. This video was highly uncomfortable to watch. The fact that somebody was allowed to go on national television, on a news platform, and share this kind of stuff without even a trans person being present is horrible. The evidence and science out there supports the existence of trans people.
No, the evidence is not on your side. And some evidence for that is the fact that you have to list all these fucking studies, and all I have to do is, wait. In the fullness of time, if you take, any given individual trans child, if you just leave them the fuck alone and stop affirming them all the damn time, there's a really, really, really good chance that they will just grow into themselves and won't be interested in any of this bullshit anymore. But you can't have that, can you?
The only thing wrong with trans healthcare is that it's painfully underfunded and there is a real lack of access to it for the people that need it. There's such a broad range of evidence out there to show that access to gender-affirming care results in positive mental health outcomes.
Same appeal to authority, repetitive, once again. It doesn't matter how many times you say it, and your compulsion to repeat yourself just sort of betrays your underlying insecurity, doesn't it?
Now, can we please stop letting transphobes and people who know nothing about the trans community and the trans experience go on and talk about it on television? They are spreading misinformation, they are spreading transphobia, they are fear-mongering, and they are harming the trans community.
Please stop enabling delusional people. They are repeating self-serving lies, reinforcing their own delusion by looking to induce them into others, especially kids, because they're sponges who have just absorbed the worldview of, the people around them. As anybody who has grown up in a less than ideal environment can tell you, that doesn't necessarily make it right or true.
If you want to know more about trans people and you want to do a segment about transitioning and the lives of trans people and access to healthcare and all of this stuff, get actual trans people.
Maybe don't learn any more about trans people. Get as far away from this shit as you can, because it's just toxic and it's only going to poison your mind. So I've been Rad Mom arguing with Jammie Dodger tonight, out here in the garden, which you cannot see because it is still, it's dark again. Yeah, I know I'm doing it at night again, but it's so much easier this way. And so then tomorrow I can do other things, like attend my own premiere. So thank you for sticking with me, and like the video if you enjoyed trying to drag, well, yeah, like the video if you enjoyed this, and subscribe to the channel for more of it. We do feminism from a materialist perspective around here, which means that we don't have a whole lot of patience for people who just throw studies and appeals to authority and random numbers at the wall. No. The proof is in the pudding. When the rubber meets the road, most of these people will get over this shit on their own if you leave them alone. So, you know, I think it might be too late for you, Jammie, and I'm sorry. On the off chance that you're watching this, yeah, repeating your magic spells over and over is not going to turn you into a real boy, hon. And please stop trying to push it onto children. I will see y'all next time. Bye.